Hi, I'm Dave, owner of Future Past Vintage Collectibles, here with my daughter Rachel.
Hello.
As we are just about every week, and Rachel has some things to tell you.
Yes, if you're new here, hello. We are comic resellers and we make videos here on YouTube about all sorts of stuff, so make sure you subscribe. Also, we do claim sales every Monday and Friday over on Instagram. We focus on super high grade bronze and copper comics, so definitely check us out over there if you haven't already.
We buy comic books, so please, we don't have a brick and mortar. We live in the ethereal world of the internet, so if you would like to sell your books, please consider us. Check us out. I love buying raw books, any grade, any era. Check us out. Real quick today, we're going to talk about some interesting raw pedigrees. I bought some books recently from someone, a friend of mine actually, and in them were some pedigrees. These are some of them from this particular pedigree. Why don't you go ahead and introduce that first book?
Yeah, so this is Prez number 1. This is from the Don Rosa pedigree. It has the certificate of authenticity on the back. I've never seen a raw copy of this before, of a Don Rosa.
Oh, yeah.
I've only ever seen the slabbed one, so that's pretty cool.
Well, that pedigree, so just so you know, we'll do a quick overview. Pedigrees came to market many years ago, and one of the criteria are their collections that predominantly have books pre-1970, and there's more than 5,000 books. They're predominantly very high grade. They're not compiled by dealers, they're compiled by collectors. And they're designated with pedigree by CGC. I don't know, there's 40 some odd pedigrees.
There's a lot. The
Yeah.
most recent one being the Promise Collection, which you've probably heard of.
Yeah, so and that collection I think ended in 1953 was the last issue, right off the top of my head. I could be wrong about that. It's interesting because Don Rosa was one of the collectors that kind of bled into the Bronze Age. They all didn't, only a couple did. Don Rosa's books are really nice. They're all not equal. So Don Rosa's are on the upper side because of the page quality. So
you're saying not all pedigrees are equal.
They're not.
Yeah, that's
they're
fair.
not. Some pedigrees maybe don't have as nice of page quality, or maybe the grades weren't as high. Don Rosa's are great. I just took the Prez number 1 out of the bag. It's actually the nicest copy I've ever seen.
Very nice.
I had a Monterey copy that I had for about 30 years, and I sold it at one of our claim sales. I think it was a near mint or a 9.4. Raw. Mm-hmm. This one's nicer. Nicest copy I've ever seen. I think it could be a 9.8. I need to get it under the lights and look at it. Would I slab it? I probably would. And it's an interesting thing to say compared to what I'm about to say in this episode. But it's good for pedigrees because there are a lot of people, and it's growing on who wants to own pedigrees because it's over. I mean, we really don't think there's going to be any more pedigrees coming to market, and who knows? But pre-1970 collections it's possible that they're out there. But anyway, there's other issues. Real quick, we'll show the other issues.
Basically, Prez 1 through 4. So here's number 2, Don Rosa.
And this is right in my wheelhouse. A non-superhero DC from the early 70s.
20 centers. This is number 3.
Yep.
I like that one. I don't think I've ever seen that issue before.
Yeah, you have, because I had this whole set.
Oh, okay, I don't remember seeing that one. I remember this one, though, with the monkeys. Yeah. This is number 4.
These are fantastic. And they're all just, what I noticed about them is how bright the covers were.
Yeah, they look brand new.
That wasn't the only one. This one, I'm actually, there was a number 2 to this.
Oh, I have it. Do you want me to go grab it? I didn't realize they were both the same.
We also have the number 2 to this. I'm not going to show it, but it's just as important. Go ahead and show this one.
This is the craziest pedigree. Kroll number 1.
It's Don Rosa.
Don Rosa
if you don't
pedigree.
Mind, show the certificate.
Yep. And I will say on the back it says up to the 1980s is where the Don Rosa pedigrees stop. So that's actually pretty late.
But he had much earlier books, and that's the thing. So
1966 was the earliest.
Yeah, so he came late when they got his collection. It came late. Actually, kind of excited about this book, and I'll tell you why. People really like obscure pedigrees for late books, and I have a couple of them now that I just kind of put away, right? From another pedigree. I have some of these from the Winnipeg collection that I put away that are very late. Here's what they like about them. It's the only pedigree, right? I haven't even looked yet, but I'm going to assume there was no other pedigrees of Kroll number 1. Plus, it's a newsstand.
I know. I was going to say, if it is a Kroll number 1, it's not a newsstand. This one's probably the
rarest. And look at it. I mean, it's just an immaculate copy.
It's a very nice copy. Not a single spine tick on it.
Really, these books were so well covered for. So I was kind of excited about seeing this because it's an oddity. And that's kind of what we have to show today is some really interesting books I picked up. Anyway, So that was the pedigree ones. So I picked up some other books that I found to be really interesting, and outliers. And the first one is this one. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah, this is Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan number 63 from 1954. This is a painted cover by Jess Marsh and Russ Manning.
Right. So
really cool cover with the rhino.
now,
Jumping.
I don't necessarily collect Dell Tarzans. I have some issues of this that are mid-grade that I picked up really cheap along the way. But these, I was going through some books and they just jumped out at me because of the quality. And I'm a huge Tarzan fan. I'm a huge Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. This is nostalgia to me. It's part of my childhood. And these just like for the price, and I just picked them up. So.
And you didn't look up any information on these, right? Because I did.
I didn't look anything up.
I'm going to throw some numbers at you. You're probably going to be shocked about this. 7 slabbed of this book on the census. The highest grade's a 9.6. This is a really high grade copy. I didn't grade it.
But it's got something going on. So I'd say this is probably an 8.0, 8.5.
Well, a 9.4, which is not the highest graded copy, but a 9.4, and again, there's only 7 slabbed, sold for $456.
Okay. That's interesting.
Isn't that crazy? And I mean, I'm sure there's very specific people out there that collect things like this, and they're willing to spend money on it because they know how rare it is for a high grade copy of them.
Well, it's a fantastic Manning cover. And then the other issue, which I actually like more, show this book.
Yeah, so this is number 65 of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan from 1955. Also Russ Manning cover.
I have to stop you. I got excited when I saw this. I started scanning the book with my eyes. And I got through it, and I'm looking at this immaculate cover. And I started to get a little giddy. And I got down to the bottom, and there's a little crease. And I almost didn't get it. I put it in the eye. I'm going to pass on that one. And then I looked at it again. I'm like, this is such a nice copy, even with that crease. It's probably like a fine, very fine, or possibly like, I think it's fine, very fine, or very fine minus.
Yeah, I haven't graded
because the rest of the book's immaculate. It's just got this crease. It's probably like 1.25 inches. But the rest of the book is probably like a 9.0 or a 9.2. Really rare for this particular era, right? Dell 10 Center. It's just it's just pretty, as you can see by the scan. But it's the monkey in the cave talking to Tarzan. I love monkey covers, and I love this. So
there are file copies of this. A 9.6 file copy sold of this for $432.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and that's the thing. I don't think I would spring for the 432, but if I was holding a 9.4, 9.6, I would get excited.
Well, there's only 5 slabbed. Highest grade is 9.6.
They're just fantastic.
Yeah.
The ones I like the most is when he's communicating with monkeys on the cover.
Because he's Tarzan.
There's 4 or 5 of these covers. I probably own 10 of these that are not this nice. Anyway, I like stuff like this.
They're cool.
Another book that I picked up is this reprint, Peacemaker #1 by Modern Comics, if you can show that. Right?
Yeah, and this is from 1978.
I think Charlton did the original. Yeah.
I'll put it up here if it wasn't Charlton.
Yeah.
But I'm
I
pretty
think
sure
Charlton did the original.
Yeah, so this is a reprint, but it's by a different publisher, which I thought was interesting.
Yep.
And this is a pretty popular book, too. It's not as expensive as the Tarzan's, but it has 56 slabs, 196, 394s. The last sale was in September of 2023, and 9.2 sold for $100.
Yeah, I bought a group of books. It wasn't like me going through a box and picking onesie. I bought a group of books, and this was in it. And it's one of those odd books you don't see often in grade.
I love his helmet in this. It doesn't look like his new helmet.
That was his old school helmet
it.
From the Fightin' Five. So he was introduced in Fightin' Five. You can put his first appearance in Fightin' Five.
Okay.
That helmet, I wish they had kept it in the show because it's great. And a couple of other odd books, if you can show this one.
This is Deadpool #1. You've probably seen this book many times from 1993.
Common is all get out. It's die cut cover. So the thing about this book is it can't be pressed. So if people can't run out and try to press one and improve it because it's got the punch out die cut cover. This is different. What's different about this one?
It's got a barcode on it.
Yeah, this is a late era newsstand. What year did this come out? Do you have
this came out in 1993, and
yeah.
I have some data points too. But a 9.8 direct copy sold for $168 in March.
Yeah.
A 9.8 newsstand sold for $600 in February.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how much more the newsstand gets on these, and it's because it's so rare.
Because they're so hard to find in 9.8, because you can't press them. Books that you cannot press are much more difficult to find in 9.8. A book from that era that has a newsstand was sold someplace that didn't have bags and boards. 90s, it was very common to bag and board a book right away, right?
Yeah.
Well, at Barnes and Nobles, they didn't sell bags and boards, or at 7-Eleven, or wherever somebody bought this. So it went through a different critical path.
Yeah.
From point of purchase to the groceries getting piled on it, whatever it was. And I don't think this is a 9.8. I took it out and looked at it.
I wish the census gave information on how many newsstands there were, because it says that there's 4,768 total copies of this issue slabbed, but it doesn't tell you how many newsstands there are. I think it would be probably worth more money if we knew how many there were.
From a collector's perspective, forget the money, which is hard to forget sometimes, but like if you were looking for this book and you wanted a copy that wasn't as common, and you see one of these versus the other one. By the way, this book's gone up a lot in the last year because of all the Deadpool hype. It will go back down. Deadpool, there's so much Deadpool out there that this stuff just, it's difficult. But this is the first number one, if I'm not mistaken. It is like the number one Deadpool.
It's the one to get if you
Here's
love
another
Deadpool.
one very similar to that in terms of what it is in the comic book world. Because Deadpool was around for a long time. And then so was this guy. So this book is similar.
This is Punisher War Journal #1. So this came out in 1988. This is also a newsstand. I don't have how many are slabbed, but a 9.8 regular issue sold for $136 and a newsstand sold for $200.
So what is this, 35% more? Here we go. These are oddities, and I picked them up in a group of books. And these are the kind of books that I like. They're the kind of books I like to sell to my customers. So I'm always focused on trying to provide books that are different, because people prefer those, especially in high grade. It's not always about the money either. It's just about people, in their collecting want a challenge. Not that this book in a #1 isn't popular. It is, but it's also common as all get out. I swear I've had 20 of these, and I had one in my collection for decades. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show you the oddities, things I've picked up. Now I want to show you some other oddities that I picked up that you don't hear about, things that aren't common. I just want to tell you guys, before I even move forward, I'm not recommending you go out and buy a single thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about me, and I'm talking about like what I do. I'm not telling you you should run out and buy these or you should pay the most. In your endeavors, if you happen to see one, at least you know what it is. How much it costs is subject to change with the wind, with the weather, with someone who's fickle. It could be in an auction, sell for half or sell for triple. Be wary. Just be wary out there because the waters are choppy. Picked up some other books, and it's so funny, the guy I got these books from, he has put these in boxes that I've looked at, and I buy boxes from him. And he's run these through so many times, I decided to go ahead and get them so he stopped showing them to me. Because he knows I know what they are. He knows that I have familiarity with undergrounds. The world of undergrounds is a deep, dark maze and web. If you haven't checked it out, if you don't care, or you do but you don't really understand it, I'm here to tell you I'm not suggesting that you get into that. I'm not telling you it's a great area to spec, but I am going to tell you what I like about it. So, Rachel, go ahead and show the first book. I picked up a stack.
Yeah, I first want to give a shout out to comicsjoint.com.
Yeah.
For their very elaborate website on all underground books, because that's where I got all the data that I'm about to throw at you.
There's a guy that literally by himself put that website up, put a tremendous amount of work, and he deserves kudos from the comic community because I think he's been doing it for 7-8 years now with that website. But if it wasn't for that information, I think a lot of people would get very lost and possibly buy a book they think's a first printing or a fifth printing or whatever, and not know that, hey, there's supposed to be tread on his shoe, or the very bottom corner is supposed to look different. And undergrounds are that complicated. So
yeah,
he's awesome.
Holler.
Thank you for doing that.
So first up is Mr. Natural #1, Robert Crumb. This is from 1970, and this is the first print. It's from San Francisco Comic Book Company.
First print, not first appearance of Mr. Natural, just so you know.
Correct. This series was after Zap.
Zap came out in 68.
Yeah, and this was 70. So a couple years later, he came out with this series. But there are 9 known printings of this issue, which is insane. The reason I know this is the #1, thanks to comicsjoint.com, there is a little bit of ink that's lighter on the bottom. On the inside front cover, there's like text that's specific to the first printing. Other printings.
In the indicia,
yeah.
it mentions some things.
The way it says like the publication is a first print. But the color on the bottom is like an indication of the first print too,
That where the stars is.
Yep.
So here's what's great. Mr. Natural, by the way, a huge pop icon from the 70s. There was posters, bumper stickers, huge part of the counterculture movement. People who took a psychedelic journey back then would look at a small square piece of paper with his picture on it.
That's all we can say on YouTube.
And consume it. So, I don't know how to say that.
Can't say anything else,
I just did. But Mr. Natural was a great big deal. And so were a lot of other Robert Crumb characters. This was a big deal. So I was a huge fan of Robert Crumb. So yeah, it's nice to have a copy of this. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Well, I just have some data. There's 63 total first prints slabbed. Again, there's 9 printing, so that's surprising to me that there's that many slabbed. 198. 3 9.6s.
Okay.
A 9.4 sold for $552 in June of 2022, and a 9.2 sold for $139 in January.
Okay.
So
I didn't know any of the financial.
I know, I'm throwing all that numbers at him without him knowing.
So a couple things you may not know about Underground. First of all, this came out in 1970, and you may ask yourself, if that came out in 1970, why isn't it 15 cents like traditional comics? And I'll tell you why. It didn't have ads. It did not sell at comic book stores. It was a behind-the-counter product. It was quite graphic. And it had no holds barred. They had no one censoring anything. They were allowed to do whatever they wanted, and they did. They were crazy. And they also had some very interesting stories that just weren't being done anywhere. So people that did read Undergrounds, it was kind of a subculture on its own. And they really did develop some really cool artists along the way. And a lot of them did a lot of homages to science fiction from the 50s, horror from the 50s. And that's the stuff I really liked. I started off with Robert Crumb, but ended up with some other artists we're going to talk about in a minute. And there were some other stuff like that.
Yeah, this is the number 2 of Mr. Natural from 1971.
If you notice on the number 2, you'll notice staining on the 50 cents. The reason there's a stain there is one of the owners of this book has decided to remove the sticker that used to be there. If they did a print run and they saw that it sold out and they had any copies left, they'd slap a sticker on there for 75 cents or whatever they decided to get some additional revenue. That's the only way anyone got paid, is by selling a book. They didn't get it from ads. One of the great things about no ads is the back covers were usually funny. They used every square inch of that book to have art, to have some kind of gag, or to do something to contribute to the story or whatever it was. So now we're getting into the artists that I actually do collect.
This is Ralph from 1971, Rip-Off Press. This is the second print and art by Richard Corbin.
If you look in cover price, they say there isn't a second print, just so you know.
But if you look at comicsjoint.com, it shows all the printing covers, or it just, basically the second print is the first print reversed.
But there is, like right now, there's a copy on, there's a book on eBay that shows a different back cover, and it's a double cover, and they're asking like $500 for it, and there's yet another cover. So this book, by the way, when I saw it in the box, I'm like, yes, please. By the way, I like the back cover better than the front cover. How about you? Any Richard
of the first print
of this book, yeah. I like the second print better than the first print.
Yeah, you like this version. Yeah.
It's the colors. It's Richard Corbin. It's like, yes, super happy to have this. It's incredibly high grade. There's something going on here. I haven't got it under the lights yet. And this kind of book I would give a very light press to. There's copies out there, by the way. Tons of them. It's when you get into grade. And that's the thing about Undergrounds. You can get tricked into a second, third, fourth, fifth print. So you got to know. Before the website...
Before Comics Joint existed,
yeah,
there was this book.
I have the new one of these, and we can't find it.
Yeah.
I think it used to come out every 5 years. And it has a great information. This stuff's not in the Overstreet price guide, even if you know what that is. A lot of people don't use that anymore. And just a quick digression, I don't need a book to be popular with the masses for me to fall in love with it and to excite me and to want to keep it. I don't need it to be expensive. I don't need it to ogle people. I just need to love it. And what I find is when I do find books like that, people tend to like it. My taste is pretty good because it's going to be books like that. And this next book is no exception. More Richard Corbin. Check this out.
This is Fever Dreams. This is the third or fourth print because they are almost identical. It's hard to determine which one's which.
It says something inside. It says 3, 4, 5, and I don't understand it.
Yeah. On Comics Join, it says the third and fourth print are almost identical. It's almost impossible to determine which one's which.
5,000 copies were printed of each. Yeah.
This is by Kitchen Sink.
Amazing art. Richard Corbin again. I'm okay. I'd love a first print, but I like the second print just fine. So here's another Richard Corbin.
Fantagore #1 in 1970. There are 4 printings of this. This is the third or fourth print. This is a 50-cent cover price, but it has a 75-cent sticker, like you were saying.
And so you think he was inspired by 70s Marvel?
You think? Skull #6. This is the last issue in the Skull series. It's from 1972.
And this particular issue is kind of low grade, and I've had it before, but I really like the cover. It's kind of crazy.
Richard Corbin, Greg Irons illustrations. There's 2 printings, but they are almost identical to each other.
Oh, and one last book. I didn't even tell Rachel about this. I just brought him. I've never shown this. I've never seen anyone show these. The film American Splendor, starring Paul Giamatti, who played Harvey Picard. Harvey Picard was a bit of a pop culture icon, a little bit. He was on David Letterman several times, got kicked off. He did some crazy stuff on David Letterman, but he drew stick figures and wrote comic books. And these, I have a few issues of it. If you can show Americans, I have 3, 4, and 5. Had these for years. Large sized. And he would get different artists, and Robert Crumb was involved in multiple issues.
You can tell that one's Robert Crumb because of the art.
Yeah. And he wrote them. It says Harvey Picard right there. And he lived, oh golly. They were written about the city he lived in. But really good movie if you haven't seen it. And another great movie is the movie Crumb, about Robert Crumb, if you haven't seen that. Both films are great. But I've had these for years and I just keep them. I always kind of wanted to have the whole set.
They're hard to keep because they're so big.
Hard to keep. Hard to find and grade. There's nothing easy about these books. They're kind of obscure out there. And if you know about that size of book, they're just really hard to figure out. Anyway, let's talk about the topic today, which was not books. I just like to show books because it's fun. And we're playing show and tell. Here we go. What I want to talk about is what I've gone through a bit on why I stopped slabbing books. And as I began a couple of years ago, I was going to sell only CGC slabs, and that has changed. And I've had, I went to a comic show recently, and I bumped into a lot of people that watched the show, and thank you if you came up and said hi. I really appreciate that. And some people told me they really appreciate me talking about some of the failures that I've had. And some people even seemed a little surprised that I would. And the fact of the matter is I'm not embarrassed about it. While sometimes it makes me squirm a little bit that some of that's happened, on the other side, none of that has not been a lesson for me. Some of it's been more expensive than others. I don't talk a lot about some of the big victories. I've made some really good decisions too, because it really doesn't matter. I think some of those learning experiences have been really good for us. It's amazing how much we've learned, and we're learning with you guys. So if you came into comics in 2021, I came back from a long hiatus about 2020, and I thought that's the way it's going to be. I thought books were going to go up and up and up, and I couldn't believe things were doubling, and I thought this was a correction that was long overdue for later books, for this era of books. And I'll give you a great example. When Disney Plus came out, and they started like running shows, I was loving Winter Soldier, and Flag Smasher came on, and I bought this book. I paid $300 for this. What is this worth today? We just looked it up. I think it was 170, I think. Was it traded last for 170 about 6 months ago? And that doesn't bother me because I knew it had, right? But here's the deal. A lot of things had. Would I send this in to get it slabbed today? I would not. As things started to decline and we were kind of segueing out and CGC's grading got really funky and they had to process in all these new people and we were learning all this stuff, and I brought Rachel on, and I transitioned from a career I've been in for decades into doing this full time. There was a lot going on, a lot of transition. There is still a tremendous amount of disruption when it comes to the comic book industry. when it comes to comic book collecting, when it comes to the hobby. And I don't believe we're on the other side of it. I think that you'll see people who make content. You're going to hear this all the time. I think that the comic book crash is over. I think we're on the other side. We're not. I mean, we're not on the other side because we're in the middle of a disruption. And the disruption is profound. I went without getting comic book bags and boards for 3 and 4 months. Couldn't get a box. There was all these things that have this long impact. Still, with some of our like fullback boards, they changed the way they produce them. They don't even make white backs anymore. Things have changed, and CGC changed. They hired all those people, and once they did, people stopped slabbing so much because so many people lost money. Now the market is absolutely glutted with slabs that are unnecessary. And I was telling Rachel this yesterday as we were discussing making this episode. Over 99% of every comic book that's ever been produced does not need to be slabbed. Very few books in comparison to all that have ever been produced actually requires, to be protected at that level, and also to be checked for restoration and the other things that they're responsible for. I don't know if you know this, but CGC is not responsible for the grade. They're not. They do make mistakes. They're very good at what they do. I would say they're some of the best out there, period. Not the best. They're some of the best because they get so much exposure. People give them a bad beat. People complain and cry around and scream and yell, and they're wrong. And that kind of frustrates me a little bit because Rachel and I grade thousands of books a month, thousands, and we understand. To really continue to improve, you're always going to have a defect rate. We understand that, so we're always trying to improve. We bounce things off each other constantly, staying humble to the fact that this is a skill that you have to train that muscle constantly. All of that being said, what is it, about CGC that makes them stand out? Well, it's really important to have a grading company to look for restoration, to look for other issues in a comic book that a lot of people don't have the expertise to do. And Rachel's had the benefit of doing this now and getting her nose in some books that are absolutely baffling. Stains, rusted staples, replaced staples, things that are like, hey, what is this? Is that a stain? Is that foxing? Is that this? Is that
a production fold? Is this what is this?
I swear you could do this for years and still see new things all the time.
Yeah.
And that's really why CGC was such a breath of fresh air when they started in the early 2000s, is they helped relieve people of all the restoration that was going on at the time. The grading was a byproduct of that, and they've gotten better and better and better. Here's the part that fascinates me. People think that you get a comic book, and it's just like, oh, it's just a comic book. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to send it to CGC, and they're going to make it a 9.8. That is not what happens. If it's a 9.8, they don't deem it and it becomes a 9.8. They will say it's a 9.8 or what they think it is. Here's the fact of the matter. A lot of people want the highest grade. They feel like the only way you can get the highest grade is if it's in a CGC case. They're not realizing that someone had to send it to them in that condition. The only thing that can possibly happen is that book to be in a lower grade once it leaves their house. That's it. They didn't make it a higher grade. Somebody looked at it and said, that is a 9.8.
Yeah, they just send it to CGC in hopes that they get the grade that they think it is.
Right. Unless they sent it to CGC to get it pressed, which is interesting because most books in 9.8 have been pressed. Not all, but most. And I'll show you, like we have some books right here. We do near mint all the time. I stopped sending books to CGC. I said, this is ridiculous. With everything they had going on, I said, we're going to stop. We're just going to start selling our raw near mint mints and see how it goes. And we've done a great job. The way we do it now, and I've been doing this for a long time, is we put them in a fullback.
Which we showed one of these last week.
Explain what so the fullback is just a much thicker cardboard.
Yeah, so we used an Ultra Pro.
We use Ultra
regular
Pro.
bag and board, a BCW Silver Age board.
Yeah.
Gerber full back.
Yep.
And a Gerber 4 milliliter bag.
Yeah, so usually I'd use a My Light bag in a smaller size, but right now we're just using the Ultra Pro.
And there is a modern size board in the middle of the book.
Yeah, and this one is where the staples are. So you can see, like, this is a near mint. Absolutely no different than a near mint I would send CGC. It's not a very fine that I send to CGC and they sprinkle dust on it and make it a 9.8. It's the exact same book that they're selling on eBay. We sell these, by the way. We've probably sold 150 near mint mints.
We sold a lot.
And people have sent them to CGC and got 9/8, the exact same thing. And this is the thing. It's like, how much is this? This is $38. How much are these going for right now on eBay? Like 100.
They're listed for over $100 slabbed in 9/8.
So, and that's just an example. It's like, that's why we stopped. The money that's going into so many books, and you go down a rabbit's hole. So this is why I stopped. If I had this book right now and I sent it in so I could sell it for more money, I'd get stuck with it.
Yeah, because it's going down.
I'd get stuck with it. So if I put this up right now as a raw book, I'd probably sell it for $90. If I put this up for exactly what it sold for last time, I could not sell it. I couldn't. Now, let's say I started doing percentages under like what GPA or what it's selling for. 10% under, it wouldn't sell. 20% under, it wouldn't sell. I price it under, and it's this era, right? There are some books I couldn't sell. I've learned that as the price goes up, once I start closing in, and I've sold books over $1,000. I've sold books, expensive books, raw. People do it every day, right? Sell raw books for a lot of money. This era is tough. If I start getting into expensive Ironmans in this era, people would prefer to have those in a slab. I get it, especially when you're starting to get very close to the slab price. So that's where there's there's still some discomfort. It turns into who you buy your books from, how much assurance you have that, like, when I get the book, is it actually going to be a near mint? Do I need to send it in and get it slabbed? And that's kind of where the market's going now, is like, which books should I get slabbed and which ones should I keep raw? That's why I showed the way that we keep our books. Do I feel like this is secure? I do. I could literally drop this, and I'm not going to, because you don't tempt fate. Test. You don't tempt fate, you know? If I was walking by a bull, I wouldn't raise a red cape just to see if it runs at me.
Well, this isn't cheap either. I mean, it's cheaper than slabbing it, but like, these bags are expensive. These boards are expensive.
It's probably $7.
Yeah.
$7. That's expensive. And you need a different size box.
And there's there's 4 boards in there. It's heavy. It'll take up more space in a box.
It's tight. So It's like you have to be careful putting it in.
it's definitely.
And even shipping it, I mean, it's like, but another thing about shipping it, it's much cheaper to ship this than a slab.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you buy these things, it's not going to be nearly as expensive when you buy a slab. So a slab with tax and everything might cost you $22, $23.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to this, right? But that's why it's really interesting the times we're in, because I'll notice that some people might feel like, hey man, the slab's only $35. I can't believe how cheap it is. I'm going to buy it. One of the challenges there is you might even have a hard time selling it later for $35. We talked about it a couple of our episodes ago, that I think there's a number that slabs value goes to 0, and you're only buying the book.
Yeah.
And if I was to sell a book for, let's say that you bought a book that's usually worth $40 and the slab just went for $40. Well, if I had the book, I'd still sell it for $40, even though you just bought a slab, because the slab gets devalued. It's just the way it's going right now.
Yeah. It depends on the era and stuff for that, but
there are tons of series that I will not slab. I don't care what the book is. If I had a near mint, I will just sell them raw, and I'll sell them for less than what the slab goes for. And I've been doing that now for going on a year and a half. But anyway, I will still slab books, but I'm having the hardest time compelling myself.
We have a huge stack of them.
And we want to send some out. Of these books are incredibly expensive. Mm-hmm. Things like my FF1,
Avengers 4.
I mean, I'd like to slab them. I don't have to. There's plenty of dealers that don't. And I may not. I don't know. But
those are the books I feel like that should be slabbed because of the key significance of them.
When I really want to slab a book, when I have a question. Like, golly, this is a borderline book.
Oh, like, is it a 9.2? Is it a 9.0? Or like for the Fantastic Four, it's pretty low grade.
It's missing a corner. It's
got
a pop staple.
Yeah.
So I might be close, but
1.5. Like, it's.
I really do trust their graders in that particular era, and I'd really like to know, what they think when it comes to really complicated books or pre-code books. I have some pre-code stuff that I'd like to them to look at. So there's still, I believe they're experts, I just think that this era is tough. We're going to talk about a couple of series, like there's whole series I won't slab that I might have slabbed before. Actually, I have slabbed. And you guys have seen those foibles, and I've talked about it. I won't even touch slabbing those books. Sometimes I'll sell a raw copy in near mint for half or less, just because I won't slab them. And if someone buys it or not, it doesn't matter to me. I'll just put them away, because one thing about a near mint, they're desirable. I mean, people still want them. I don't care who you are. That's a cool cover.
That book is so cool.
It's like, that might be out of your price range. You might not collect them, and I get that. It's like $38. So
yeah, there's 143 of those slabbed.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a late era Wolverine. Why are people slabbing it? Because it's cool.
It's a cool cover.
Do I think it's $150 cool? I don't know.
Well, and it looks like $80 is like the lowest price a 9/8's listed for. So between 80 and 100 is what 9/8s are listed for on eBay.
Yeah, I don't know about 80.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk about some series that I looked at. So I was showing Rachel, like, I'm going to tell you some series I don't think I'd slab any books in it. Mm-hmm. ROM. I wouldn't slab any ROMs, right? And so we looked at how many keys are in ROM.
There's 3 keys on cover price, minor keys, 75 issues with 3 minor keys.
Yeah, so, and then we looked at, like, there's some issues that I really like that sell well. ROMs typically sell well. In grade. When I say sell well, what is in grade? Near mint plus, near mint, 9698. And what do I mean sell well? I mean when they're between, like, in that grade, $10 and $14, $16. Mm-hmm. 9.6s are almost really hard to find, guys. If you can find 9.6s raw, which means very little's wrong with that book. No broken color. I mean, you're looking at a really nice book. It's hard to find something wrong with the naked eye. Really hard to find something wrong with the naked eye. $10, yeah. I mean, that's a good deal. You're paying $14, $15 for near mint. You're going to find that in a box? Possibly. Somebody just bought a collection that somebody read them once, put them away, and they somehow got it to a convention. You're going through a box, you pick 3 or 4 out, they want $15 each. I wouldn't haggle too much. But if you go out and buy slabs, you're not going to get them for under $40, $50. You're paying for the plastic. Mm-hmm. Which issue were we talking about? We looked up one. We just did like a sample. We like pulled up an issue that we
what's
like.
Something we sell a lot of that's not a key.
That we sell a lot of.
And I picked ROM 26 because it has a really sick Galactus cover. And every time we put that up for sale, someone buys it.
Yep.
Because it's cool. It's not a key, but it's popular because it has Galactus, whatever. There's 43 total slabbed, 22 9/8s on the census. A 9/8 sold for $200 in July of last year. And then in 2022, a 9/8 sold for $82. So it's kind of fluctuated. A high grade raw copy is listed on eBay right now for $55.
A what?
A high grade raw copy is listed for $55 on eBay.
So, well, they advertise it as high grade.
Yeah, it just says high grade. It doesn't say what grade it is. But yeah.
So, like, I think that we just sold a copy. It was near mint for like $12 or $14, which is what I think the price of a near mint copy of that is raw. I don't mean eBay near mint. I mean near mint. You're talking about a couple of very small spine stress lines, possibly a very small corner issue, but no folded corners, no big creases.
Maybe one color break.
Yep. Small color breaks, but not a lot. It shouldn't be intrusive to the eye. You're starting to get very small amounts of wear at a 9.2, right? Very small amounts. 9.4 is a great collecting grade because near mint is an impossible grade.
It's very hard to get.
It's super hard to get. I used to get upset in my pull box because a lot of books weren't near mint, And
how many hands have touched it since it got to you?
Well, guys, have you ever seen someone separating comic books? Blah, boom, pop, pip, pop. I'm like, whoa!
Doing this in the box.
It drive me nuts. It used to drive me nuts. I used to watch people. I'm like, I can't look at this.
Like touching it with their finger.
I've gone to buy collections and stuff and watch people like take a stack of books, raw books, and flop them. I'm like, don't do that to my books.
Like, am I about to buy these?
Another series that got a lot of heat with the MCU was West Coast Avengers. So we kind of looked at there's really nothing in there that I would slab. West Coast Avengers 45.
It's probably the only one.
I have several of them that are slabbed. I love that cover.
Yeah.
So John Byrne just firing on all pistons,
perfect homage.
Redoing the first appearance of Vision is a perfect homage. But that book has been really fluctuating, and that's kind of my point. when Rachel spoke with the ROM 26 and said a copy sold for 200, it was the only copy that sold for 200.
Yeah, out of any issue sold.
Somebody was moved emotionally by that cover and threw $200 at it because at that moment in time they were excited by it. It was the only copy available, and they bought it. And that's what comic books do. I mean, they excite people, and that was a good buy for that person. I'm not begrudging someone of that. I'm just telling you, someone else paid $80 for it. It really is right place, right time type of thing. Patience rules the day. Anything you look at, chances are if you just wait, you'll get it cheaper. And I encourage people to do that constantly. We looked at a couple of issues there, and there's a couple that got some MCU heat. And what I've learned about MCU heat, if the MCU, any spec in the MCU has touched that book, I do not slab it. I'll sell it, but I kind of watch the price. I'm not trying to sell a super inflated book. Let's talk about this West Coast Avengers book.
Yeah, so we looked at two. The first one was West Coast Avengers 46, which is a key. It's the first team up of Great Lakes Avengers, which is the one that had spec around it.
The most important book that's ever been printed.
Everyone loves it. A 9.8 sold for $130 in March of 2024. A 9.8 also sold for $113 in February of 2024. In 2023, there were 7 sales. The highest $189 and the lowest $38 last year. So it definitely has some heat on it, but not as much as it did last year. Or maybe that's when it sold at the highest whenever the spec started.
Well, the 38, yeah, I mean, that book's dangerous to me because it was a nothing burger that turned into a something burger, which is going to be a nothing burger again. Mark my words. For me, it's like if you collect that series, you like those characters, whatever it is, I get why you want it. I have copies. I've sold copies. I have tons of West Coast Avenger. I bet you I have 7, 8 copies. I have near mints coming out of my ears. I don't even sell them.
There's only 8 minor keys in the whole series,
which is a lot.
Issues.
I mean, you're talking about 20% of the series as a key of some kind. I'll tell you, they're cold.
Yeah.
If I was to put them up right now for more than $10, they wouldn't sell.
Yeah.
So they're $8 books. That's nothing to write home to mom about. It's not like, oh, yeah, that's a great series. You'd have to compel people to buy them with the cheap price.
Yeah.
So they're not really sought after, right?
Well, this is another one. This is a West Coast Avengers 31. This is a Texas Twister and Phantom Rider appearance. And we just picked this one out because we had it in our backstock ones that we sell on our claim sale.
Yeah, just to show that we have tons of near mint.
So many.
Have put away.
Bunch of West Coast Avengers as well. And so we just looked it up just to get the information on it, and it was really interesting. A 9.8 sold for $134 in February of 2024. And this is not a key. It has a Texas Twister appearance.
It has appearances that... for whatever reason, is bringing heat to it.
Yeah, there's popularity around this book right now because of the appearances, but it's not a key or anything in West Coast Avengers.
But it's worth more than the key that we're talking about.
It's worth more than the 46, which is interesting. There's 17 total slabbed, 7 9/8 on the census. And this is not one that we would recommend slabbing. Like, we wouldn't get this slabbed, even though we know it's a 9/8.
And even like books that aren't 9/8, we still keep like this. Like, most people would slab this book.
It's X-Men 99.
Right? This is a 9/2.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, it's cheaper to buy it like this. So we just put them away. I'll throw it in my sale. But that's why I just stopped slabbing a long time ago. And I'm trying to convince myself. But as people go through this disruption and they're trying to figure out, like, what to do, I get it. I have a lot of people that are buying raw, but they're a little bit confused. And I get this part. And believe me, I'm not telling you what to do. You should do whatever makes you happy. You know?
If you love West Coast Avengers and you want all of them slabbed.
However you enjoy the hobby, man, you shouldn't let anyone talk you out of that. I do think that we listen to each other and we get ideas off each other. I have been too spontaneous at times, and that has not been great. You know, so I'll hear somebody say something and I'll make a move, and then later on thought, you know, if I knew more about that, I wouldn't have done it. And people try to sell me things sometimes, and I'll tell them straight up, I don't know enough about that to buy it. You know, when it comes to raw books, we enjoy selling raw books. Mm-hmm. When it comes to slabs, I just recently got some slabs that I've had before and sold and done well with them, and they're like Bronze Age slabs. And if they're not keys, they're they've gone down 50, 60%.
Yeah.
And so I can't emphasize enough, and it's the truth, how much things have dropped because people's confidence is so far down, and this is what I'm seeing as a seller, and they've decided if they're going to invest in something, this is what it seems like to me. They're either going to invest in the books they want the most, or they're going to invest in keys only. Where it used to be a little looser, like I really like that book and I think I'll jump in, where people's confidence has waned and they're like, I don't know if I should buy that. Is that too much? Mm-hmm. And where would I find out if it is or isn't? 9.8's not the grade. 9.8 might be a grade for a brand new modern book, but when you start going backwards and you start going into, the 70s, 60s, yeah, 9.8's kind of not a thing unless you're truly investing and you want a Werewolf by Night #1 in a 9.8, get out your checkbook.
I know, it's like if you have a lot of money to spend and you can find one.
And you can find one and then when you do, it's now you're in a whole different realm.
Yeah, that's a different ballgame.
It's a fist fight. I think that buying raw has changed for a lot of people. I think where you buy comic books has changed. I think that Whatnot has really changed the landscape quite a bit. Heritage can get double what the exact same book sitting on eBay gets. I don't know why. I think people actually kind of live in an ecosystem where all they look at is Heritage. And they'll pay more than the same book sitting somewhere else. There's so many choices out there, you guys. It's overwhelming the amount of choices you have you may not even know you have.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 5,000 subscribers.
Same bat station, same bat channel.
And then follow us over on Instagram too. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.